Hey, so if you've been around this channel for long enough, you probably know that I love playing the Deathslinger. I'm certain that my 2,000 hours in Rainbow Six has a lot to do with that, but what makes him so fun to me is beyond my love for first-person shooters. It's beyond the cowboy getup, the incredible chase theme, or the fact that I like men. Although all three of those do definitely help. It's more that out of any killer, Deathslinger is rewarded the heaviest through being able to both manipulate and directly interact with the base mechanics of the game. His simplicity begets complexity with how he can twist the map's geometry into seemingly impossible hits, making him one of the most satisfying killers to play when things go just right. To kick things off, a lot of people think of Deathslinger as this hyper-complex range killer that you need a degree in mathematics to grasp. I'm going to say something controversial though. Deathslinger is not a conventional range killer, at least not always. His ability to pressure, damage, and down survivors at long distances is not nearly as consistent as Huntress or even Trickster or Artist nowadays. In reality, his biggest strength comes from his ability to make survivors malposition and to use the geometry of the map to his advantage, churning often moderately safe pallets or window loops into incredibly unsafe ones. In that sense, I find Deathslinger more of a zoning anti-loop killer that gets hits consistently at medium ranges, similar in execution to Nemesis, Demogorgon, and Houndmaster. I'm making this statement off the rip because one of the greatest frustrations for newer players is approaching Caleb like he's on par with Huntress shortly before they miss a handful of long-range shots and get teabagged at the exit gates with 0 kills. He is, in my humble opinion, stronger than Huntress, but you need to know how to play Deathslinger in order to fully realize this potential. In this guide, I want to offer some tips that might help shore up amateur mistakes while also giving genuine insight on how to become lethally efficient with what I believe to be the most fun killer in the game. This video is also broken into chunks, each with their own timestamps for your own convenience. It's a big one, so buckle up ladies and gents, fellow queers and gender bents. Welcome to a pretty alright Deathslinger guide. The first question that anyone brings up for Deathslinger is, why should anyone choose to play this range killer when more consistent anti-loop options like Nemesis or Demogorgon, or when more consistent long-range options like Huntress and even Artist exist? The simple answer lies in his power of precision and resource denial. At a certain point in your Deathslinger journey, you'll feel like you can see through the fabric of space and time, and that is to say, you'll be able to have a deep understanding of the limitations or otherwise limitless possibilities presented to you by the very framework of DBD itself, and in that, its map design. While Nemesis might be able to maintain a relentless pursuit with the power that grows in strength over time, or Huntress might be able to clap survivors running on the other side of the map, Deathslinger's ability to sneak shots through various gaps in the game's geometry allows him to play in a much stealthier manner, which makes him an unseen threat in several scenarios. I find myself landing shots over top of or through obstacles that most survivors aren't anticipating, which makes him feel powerful in his unpredictability. In order to communicate the thought process that goes into landing shots consistently, I've come up with an easy acronym, the AAA, which stands for Assess, Aim, and Adjust. That first step, Assess, happens to be a two-parter where I will assess the movement of the survivor and assess the obstacle that stands between them and myself. Which way are they moving, and are they going to move behind something that I can't shoot through before I can get a shot ready? Once I've determined their direction, I aim, usually around butt height since that's where the hitbox is centered. Then, if I see that they're about to make a last-second adjustment, I adjust my aim slightly as necessary. When I whiff, I know that it's because I aimed without adjusting or assessing, or I assessed and adjusted too far without actually aiming first. It's important to know that some survivors will try to zigzag, but they will always move the same amount of distance in between each zig and zag, meaning that you can actually aim dead center of where their zigzag is and catch them as they go back and forth because they're making their movement so predictable. But May, how does one actually aim? If finding your ideal sensitivity is what you're after, then I highly suggest following this short aiming guide by Aquino, which I'll link below. Personally, I have my mouse set to 800 DPI and my in-game sensitivity at 30%. The principles of aiming with Deathslinger are pretty simple. When you aim down sights, you'll want to use the center crosshair to guide where your shot will go. However, since Deathslinger's power is a projectile that travels at 40 meters per second, we have to be mindful to lead our shots appropriately against survivors at distance. At close ranges, you can aim at the survivors' butts, since that's what their hitbox anchors around, whether they're sprinting, crouching, or walking. At distance, we have to use some handy visual guides to help lead our shots. The general rule of thumb is that if a survivor is running perpendicular to you, line up the outer prong on the iron sights with their face. If they're running at more of a diagonal, line it up with their butt instead. It's really that simple. The slightly more complicated part comes with how to handle this at different ranges, and usually at long range these guides work just fine, but at ranges at around 6 to 10 meters the adjustment is a little more central, and learning the exact use case scenario for each one becomes more relevant with time. But if you really must know, whenever the survivor is closer to you, the more central that you have to aim because their hitbox won't change enough in the time that it takes to fire at close ranges. The aiming component is the largest hurdle for anyone to get past and is honestly the primary component in playing this killer capably. However, assessing survivor movement is just as important as it dictates where to aim, which has another pair of decisions to check off. First off is the target in an open space. If you can see them clearly in an open space, there is a high likelihood that they will double back to dodge a shot, which means that we will have to adjust our aim preemptively. If you can't see them clearly, it's likely that they won't dodge, since most players will not try to dodge a spear that they can't see coming, and we can lead our shots like we normally would at regular range. The way that I do this consistently is by pretending like I have wall hacks on. Based on my knowledge of regular survivor movement, I try to pretend like I can see their outline highlighted through the wall and lead my shot as if I were taking shots out in the open. The rest of it comes down to confidence and generally accrued map knowledge on how different obstacles interact with Deathslinger's power, and it comes down to this quote from Sun Tzu's Art of War, which is that you cannot shoot through obstacles that you don't believe you can shoot through. Deathslinger's power abides by the rule of if you can see through it, you can probably shoot through it, though there are some notable exceptions. The non-general rule of thumb is that if you know that a survivor is standing at full height behind it, you can probably hit them over it too. And this is all part of the assess, aim, and adjust, because the misconception with Deathslinger is one that is carried over from most other killers. If I can't see the survivor, then I probably can't hit them. Truth of the matter is, even if you can't see the survivor, if you learn to assess where they're running and what they're running behind, then you'll be capable of landing shots a lot more readily. With all those basics out of the way, let me show you how they work in practice with just a few clips. The collision hitbox for Deathslinger's spear is tiny, teeny tiny. From what I have estimated, it is roughly the size of an American quarter, or about this big on screen when it fires, which is a lot smaller than the actual appearance of the spear itself. This is important because the difference between assuming it's around the size of a golf ball and a quarter depends on how much lenience there is in the obstacles that can be shot through or around. You can shoot through this stone structure on Eyrie of Crows comfortably, or the boarded up windows on Coldwind Shack, but there's these fences on the game, the gaps in the paper on the Yamaoka Shacks, and even the space underneath the blinds on this office in the RPD map. If you're wondering why this works, well, it's just hitboxes, baby. Conversely, the hitboxes for survivors are fairly crude and rudimentary. It does not matter if you're playing the Best Girl, A Street, or Papa Jeff, they all have the same hitbox. The wiki page for attacks shows a great example of the killer's hurtbox versus a survivor's hitbox when the killer is using a basic attack. And as you can see, the hitbox for the survivor is a capsule shape that anchors around their pelvis and rounds out over top of their heads even while crouching. It also means that while the survivor is running, the capsule remains upright even if their model looks like it's leaning forward slightly in their running animation. It does not matter what part of the hitbox the spear hits, if the spear connects anywhere on the diagram, the survivor will be speared, and always at the same consistent chest height. I sometimes tend to aim too low, more at the knees or calves, and it looks extra funny seeing my shot clearly land there before snapping up. But what's even more funny is knowing that a shot visibly sailed over someone's head, hit what was seemingly thin air over them, and it still snaps downwards to pull them in by their chest. To get the most accurate shots possible, you need to be standing about half a meter back from the obstacle that you want to shoot through or over, and you need to be using the default weapon. The reason for this is because when the hitbox for the spear spawns in, it actually spawns in behind the tip of the spear, meaning that if you're grinding up against a rock or a shelf, the gun will clip through the obstacle and instantly spawn the hitbox inside of the rock. So give yourself a little bit of space to actually fire the weapon. And now for the default weapon, many people are probably fairly well aware of this, but the only weapon that has its sights properly calibrated to the tip of the weapon is the default weapon. Every other skin is misaligned to the point where you can see the spear clipping through the model of the gun itself, and if you inspect the different weapons in the shop, you can compare every other weapon to the base weapon and notice how the spear's relative height jumps slightly upwards for each of them. That being said, if you compare every weapon skin that isn't the default weapon to each other, they all seem to be calibrated to the same height, but then the problem therein is that each gun's model changes wildly, and so the visual aid is actually less consistent even if you try to adjust your aim. All of this is to say that there is a lot more that you can shoot through than you might initially realize, but to get the most comfortable with actually using the power and understanding where to aim, the default weapon will serve you best. Where can you aim? Now, that's an entirely different question, and that's what sits at the core of making Deathslinger fun. Keep an eye out for irregular gaps in the map, and use the practice you've put towards envisioning the survivor's outline to line up shots through seemingly impenetrable walls. Is this the most effective way to play Deathslinger? Not at all, but putting time towards this skill by accepting that these shots might not land has been far more rewarding for me than trying to play the game optimally, and plus they make for fun clips. I've talked about the more practical side of the power since I'm fairly certain that's what most people are here for, but now it's time to talk about the actual numbers and statistics behind everything because they provide the foundation for what we're going on to do next. Deathslinger is a 110% movement speed killer. Survivors run at 4 meters per second, which is 100% movement speed, while most killers, including Wraith, move at 115% or 4.6 meters per second. He also comes equipped with a standard 32 meter terror radius, has a normal lunge distance, and is classified as a tall character. This means that he is exceptionally poor at mind games around pallets or loops since his hat can be pretty clearly seen over most of them. In order to make up for this, he'll have to use his power, the Redeemer. The Redeemer is Caleb Quinn's iconic harpoon rifle, which takes 0.4 seconds to aim in. While scoped in, Deathslinger suffers from a number of stat debuffs. His movement speed is reduced to 3.74 meters per second, his field of view is zoomed in by 25%, and his horizontal aim speed is reduced to 40% of its initial value. That is, if you play on 50% sensitivity, it effectively goes down to 20% while aimed in. He can only fire a shot once fully aimed in, which has a 0.5 second firing delay after the attack button is pressed, and the shot travels up to a maximum distance of 18 meters at a speed of 40 meters per second, taking 0.45 seconds to travel the full distance. If the shot doesn't collide with an obstacle or a survivor before it reaches its full distance, the spear then retracts at a rate of 25 meters per second, taking up to 0.72 seconds if it travels the maximum distance out and back. After missing a shot, Deathslinger suffers a 1.5 second cooldown penalty before he can initiate a reload or even take any action aside from strafing. Alternatively, if you choose not to take a shot right away, lowering the rifle takes 0.6 seconds and you cannot take any regular killer action until this lowering animation completes. Another very important thing to note here is that when Deathslinger aims down sights, his speed is gradually reduced to 3.74 meters per second over the 0.4 second aiming duration, allowing you to South Dakota drift around corners that survivors might be behind. This makes you less predictable and more likely to catch survivors off guard because DBD is a weird game. A common zoning technique with this killer is to simply tap the aim button to appear as if you're going to take a shot, and many survivors will try to zigzag away from the shot and lose considerable distance while doing so. It's a cheesy way to use the power, and it honestly reminds me of the boring but ultimately effective strategy of tapping M2 as employed by the Unknown, the Demogorgon, and even the Executioner. I mostly use it when I'm trying to understand a survivor's movement patterns for a shot at distance, or when I know that I can't hit over a pallet but a survivor will crouch and lose distance every single time they do so. Make them flinch, then adjust to their flinching by leading the shot in the direction that they dodged in initially. It works surprisingly well and is less annoying than having to chase someone into another tile. In the last segment, we talked about leading shots, and in this segment, you understand why we do so. Here, in this clip, I have a general feeling that the survivor's movement will cause them to immediately change directions and strafe perpendicular to me, so instead of lining up the shot with where they are presently, I microflick in a way that lines up the harpoon as if they are running perpendicular to me already. And now that I have them on the spear, we enter the second part of Deathslinger's power, the chain meter. After a spear lands, there is a half-second delay before the chain meter appears and starts depleting. The chain starts with 100 charges and depletes at a rate of 2.5 charges per second, which I'll abbreviate as C/S. If the chain is not visibly glowing by pulling through an obstacle, and if the survivor is not struggling against the chain, it will take 40 seconds to break. Survivors that are experienced against the Deathslinger might know to not struggle against the chain while healthy, since it forces him to either take a basic attack cooldown or to pull the chain through an obstacle and suffer a stun for the damage state. Once the chain breaks, or if Deathslinger melees his speared target after reeling them in, the survivor will become injured and put into the deep wound status effect. If the survivor pulls against the chain while it's not being pulled through an obstacle, it takes roughly 5.7 seconds to break. Pulling the chain through an obstacle while the survivor is not struggling takes 4.4 seconds to break, and if both forms of resistances are met, it takes 2.7 seconds to break. You can manipulate the chain's path by moving your aim around while reeling a survivor in. If you pull up to avoid low obstacles, or to the side to avoid hitting a door frame or the end of a 4-lane tile, you can occasionally help yourself extend the chain's life, which is a vital skill for any Deathslinger player to learn. And ideally, Deathslinger will want to melee his target instead of breaking the chain for one specific reason, and that's because it keeps his vision up and lets him reload slightly quicker. Even though the cooldown of a successful basic attack and the stun following a chain break are pretty much the exact same at 2.7 seconds each, although it's 2.75 from a chain break, but that 0.05 makes no difference. Anyway, breaking the chain forces Deathslinger's camera downwards and makes it more difficult for him to follow up on the survivor's movement. It's also very important to know that Deathslinger's power cannot down by itself. If he wants to down a survivor, he has to melee them, either after a spear or by running at them normally. The ideal combo is hitting a basic attack and then following it up with a shot, which doesn't happen too often, but it is the quickest way for Slinger to knock somebody down. It's also important to note that a missed basic attack cooldown has a cooldown of 1.5 seconds, which is less than a stun at 2.7. What this means is that when I find myself spearing somebody through an obstacle and I try to make as much distance as I can before the chain breaks, I will then lunge for distance to take the 1.5 second cooldown instead of the stun cooldown. More often than not, I'll land the hit even if it's at the very tip of the hitbox. And this is possible because when the survivor is speared, they are forced to face the Deathslinger directly no matter how he strafes. And if the survivor wants to make the maximum distance away, they'll have to perform a 180-degree turn, which causes them to basically spin in place for a split second and allows Deathslinger a crucial extra split second to get those lunges in. If I don't land the hit, I have at least closed some of the distance that was there initially, and I will suffer a 1.5 second miss cooldown before being able to close the target down at my regular 110% movement speed anyway. You might also notice that virtually anyone with experience on Deathslinger will tend to walk backwards while reeling. This isn't because it makes him reel any faster, but because walking backwards gives the survivor less control over their ability to strafe and potentially catch themselves on obstacles. Slinger does also move slightly faster when walking backwards instead of forwards, but the actual time it takes to reel the chain does not increase. The chain will always reel a survivor in at a rate of 2.76 meters per second, taking up to 6.52 seconds to reel a survivor in from 18 meters away. Combining all these numbers together, the fastest that Deathslinger can down a survivor without the help of add-ons is 2.7 seconds for a successful basic attack, 0.4 seconds to aim in, roughly 0.3 seconds for the harpoon to catch the survivor at the distance they've cleared, and then 4.5 seconds to reel and melee the survivor, coming to a total of 7.9 seconds. For a killer that has a range power, this feels relatively slow, but I like to think of it as the main charm to Caleb's kit. His power is precise and it has a rhythmic nature to it, and it's all helped by the fact that you can literally kill survivors with trigonometry. This is a fairly short segment, but I think it's important in terms of talking about how Deathslinger visualizes different obstacles in the game. If you imagine every loop as a rectangle, while yourself and the opposing survivor are points along its perimeter, the closest distance between you and the survivor is a line that leads straight across. Deathslinger's projectile environment hitbox is something like 2 centimeters in diameter. It's really small. And there are some glaring exceptions to what you can shoot through, but through pattern recognition and practice, you'll be able to remember subconsciously what those exceptions are. For starters, Deathslinger can shoot over obstacles. That's pretty simple. He can shoot through obstacles that have dips in their vertical clearance, such as every filler tile in Toba Landing. The convenience of being able to shoot through and over obstacles is how it not only shortens the loop by creating a straight line between you and the survivor, but it also makes the tile shorter than the survivor might realize themselves. Here on Shack, the survivor thinks that they are looping a structure of this size against Deathslinger, but since we are able to shoot through the non-window side, the structure is way smaller than it actually appears. Now in this instance, when you hit these shots on the backs of walls, and honestly in many instances, you don't want to start reeling right away until you are more perpendicular to the survivor. Despite what you might have heard, reeling does not actually make the chain break faster, but what it does do is it increases your friction against obstacles. When the Deathslinger spears a survivor and he walks towards them, the survivor will only be able to strafe side to side. They cannot strafe backwards. When he reels the survivor though, he will always pull them towards himself, even if the survivor happens to be on the other side of an obstacle. If the survivor starts colliding with an obstacle as they're being pulled in, then the Deathslinger himself starts getting pulled into the obstacle between them because the chain still has to shorten because of how you're reeling, and it causes him to hug the obstacle too tightly and he gains too much friction here. If I don't reel in this instance though, and I strafe to the side and then reel when the survivor is more perpendicular, I both avoid the friction of being caught awkwardly on the map's geometry and let the reeling do the work for me. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. A lot of Deathslinger's add-ons suck at the moment, and I hope he gets an add-on pass sometime in the future. For this ranking, I'm going to consider the average player's gameplay, and not the gameplay of someone who has hundreds if not thousands of hours on Deathslinger. I know some people who swear by Iridescent Coin, but I'm going to make a controversial statement. I don't think Iridescent Coin has the consistency for all players and maps to be his universal best add-on. His best add-on, bar none, is the Warden's Keys add-on. Even though the Iridescent Coin has the capability to turn a match on its head, the prerequisites for it aren't always easy to hit, and doubly so if you get sent to an indoor map. Warden's Keys takes 0.35 seconds off of your reload timer, and because of that, you'll very rarely see me play a game without this add-on equipped. It has no downside, and it pairs with every other add-on in Deathslinger's kit extremely well because of how versatile it is. The second best add-on might be one that actually surprises you, but honestly, I think it's the tin oil can. Whenever Deathslinger fires a shot and misses, he has a 1.5 second penalty before he can take any action. He can't M1 or reload or vault or anything while this penalty is enacted, and Tin Oil Can reduces this negative effect by 50%. Pair Tin Oil Can with Warden's Keys, and suddenly the time between the chain returning from a miss and a reload goes from 4.1 seconds to 3.25 seconds. This add-on has also let me get hits on survivors that I missed at close range by giving me that faster recovery time, which in my opinion adds to a lot of his power. This of course leads us to his third best add-on, the Iridescent Coin. In the right hands and the right circumstances, Iridescent Coin has the capability to be Deathslinger's best add-on. You land long-range shots in exchange for saving yourself an immense amount of time. 12 meters also isn't as far as you think. It's the distance of Shack's long wall plus a couple steps, and you'll know when you hit it when the sharpshooter score event appears in the top right corner of your screen. As I mentioned earlier though, you have to be capable at landing long-range shots while also having the ability to predict survivor movement, which isn't easy and can be hampered by an indoor map or even by a survivor just predicting you correctly. The fourth best add-on slot goes to Bayshore's Cigar. This add-on reduces your stun timer after the chain breaks, which can be used to 2-tap survivors or gain distance on people that get caught in the environment frequently. This add-on reduces the stun duration by 0.75 seconds, bringing it from 2.75 to a flat 2, meaning that if you break the chain, it's actually faster than if you try to get the M1 when you have this add-on equipped. It also happens to be a good anti-body blocking add-on because you get to break the chain sooner and recover from the stun sooner, and then hit the survivor that's trying to tank a hit for the survivor that's been speared. It's a great time-saving tool, but it also comes with the unique drawback that it gets no value on survivors that are already injured. It's good as an aggressive tool, but only useful about half the time. But past that, Deathslinger really doesn't have many good add-ons. You have the Honey Locust Thorns, which inflict Mangled when the chain breaks, or the Rusted Spike, which inflicts Mangled when you hit a survivor after spearing them. Spike is better because, as I mentioned in part 4, it's better to hit a survivor than break the chain, but at that point, why not just run a stronger add-on and put Sloppy Butcher into the build? You also notice that neither of these add-ons apply the Hemorrhage effect, just Mangled. And Mangled by itself feels especially useless with how strong healing feels presently. Following this up, you have the add-ons that do the effects of the strong add-ons but at lesser amounts. Modified Ammo Belt is okay, purely for the reason that I can stack its cooldown with Warden's Keys, but it's strictly not preferable unless you run out of keys entirely. Spit Polish Rag does a similar thing, where its effect does stack with Tin Oil Can, though this combo is strictly worse than Tin Oil Can with keys or double reload, since it only benefits you if you miss, and well, you don't want to miss, you always have to reload anyway. Chewing Tobacco, on the other hand, does not stack with Bayshore Cigar, as the game will always take the add-on with the higher reduction value, and 0.25 seconds by itself is so negligible that you might as well be running a blank add-on slot here. Hellsure Iron is one of the most disappointing iridescent add-ons in the game. When you spear a survivor, you gain undetectable, and you retain that undetectable status for 10 seconds after the spear breaks. But this 10 seconds starts the instant the chain is broken though, or after you go for an M1, so it's really more like 7.3 seconds of undetectable if you land the shot. It's a meme add-on that has some uses because other survivors get really brazen the second that they don't hear a terror radius, but the gun is so loud still that it doesn't matter anyway. Bayshore's Gold Tooth and Snake Oil have incorrectly written descriptions. The description says that it increases reeling speeds, but what it actually does is increase Deathslinger's strafing speed while reeling by the listed percentages. In part 3, I pointed out how the time it takes to reel a survivor will never change, and all these add-ons do is it allows Deathslinger to close distance or strafe backwards quicker than he would without them. So while the distance that he can clear increases, these add-ons do nothing in terms of saving time and are effectively useless. That much can also be said for the rest of the add-ons that I haven't mentioned yet, including Wanted Poster and Jaw Smasher, both of which can be stacked to increase Deathslinger's movement speed while he's aiming down sights. Generally speaking, holding your aim with Deathslinger isn't the greatest strategy since it makes you lose distance more often than not, making these add-ons an unreliable crutch. You want to land the shot. If you want to zone a survivor, tapping your power button works just as well, at which point you should just run other add-ons. Gold Creek Whiskey and Marshall's Badge can both be stacked to reduce Deathslinger's terror radius by 12 meters, a number that can be brought to 20 meters if paired with Monitor and Abuse. This gives Deathslinger a 12 meter terror radius if he's aiming down sights constantly, which feels somehow even more useless than the ADS movement speed add-ons. Run self perks and generally don't bother with these two. A pair of add-ons that I completely forgot about are the Endurance Duration add-ons, Barbed Wire and Poison Ivy Leaves. Both of these increase the mending time of survivors by 4 seconds and 1.5 seconds respectively, which is a good effect on a killer that likes to play with a hit and run playstyle, which Deathslinger is not. Slinger spends so much time trying to get around the map and has so much strength in the 1v1 that trying to disrupt multiple targets at once is detrimental for his design. Mending timers are also faster across the board, so again, there's no point to running these add-ons. And finally, we have the chain add-ons, the Prison Chain and the Rickety Chain. Prison Chain is okay at first until you realize that it only increases the chain duration by an average of 0.4 seconds, which isn't a whole lot for a purple add-on. I know that I've said that Deathslinger is a killer that deals in precision and that every fraction of a second matters, but in most scenarios you're landing the hit on a survivor without this add-on anyway. It's too weak of an effect for a purple add-on and is more of a win more kind of add-on instead of one that mitigates his weaknesses. It's not terrible and could arguably be his 5th strongest add-on, but I'd really rather run other things. Rickety Chain is just a meme add-on. You get 400 points instead of 200 when you spear a survivor at close range, but not at long range. That point still stays the same, in exchange for the chain breaking twice as fast. This is utterly useless unless you're trying to make a meme build with Bayshore's Cigar or something utterly ridiculous. So to recap, these 4 are good, these can be paired or used as an emergency stock backup, this one is weird, and the rest are generally not worth running. And that leads us into our perk selection and builds that you can run with Deathslinger. If you only have Deathslinger unlocked with Iridescent Shards, I recommend this generalist build. Deadman Switch and No Holds Barred are 2 solid perks for slowing the game down, while Spies from the Shadows remains to be a decent information perk. Hex, No One Escapes Death is a good second chance perk for killers that use their M1 to down survivors, and with how punishing Deathslinger can be to play initially, there will be quite a few games that get to the end game, and this perk helps mitigate early mistakes. Other perks you can run in here include Scourge Hook Weeping Wounds, Gearhead, Sloppy Butcher, and Whispers, but this is the easiest loadout that I can think of. Add-ons wise, I do have my recommended pairing here, but if you only have green and brown add-ons, you can run Modified Ammo Belt with Rusted Spike as well. This next build I featured heavily in my How a P100 Deathslinger Plays DVD video, and it remains to be my favorite all-rounder build for the killer. Surge makes all generators explode within 32 meters after we down a survivor, and Surveillance marks them all in white after they've been hit. Mindbreaker is in here to prevent survivors from using Sprint Burst immediately off of a generator, while Whispers is a personal favorite information perk as it has the ability to save the Deathslinger so much time. I can walk towards a generator in a corner of a map and then realize that there's nobody back there because Whispers isn't on and leave the area, saving me the time that it would take me to have otherwise gone to the generator and back again. You might also notice that this build features 2 perks from the Demogorgon and a general perk. For the builds that I like to play on Deathslinger, I would highly recommend trying to unlock the Demogorgon early on for Surge, and you can replace Surveillance with any of the perks from the previous Generalist build. I'm not the kind of person that likes to run full meta builds all the time, but if you're looking for the strongest combination of perks for Deathslinger to get your win streak running, this is what I'd go for. Corrupt Intervention and Scourge Hook Pain Resonance are strong perks on basically every killer build, while Surge remains to be one of the best perks in slot for Deathslinger specifically. I went with Agitation as the final perk, which you can also get with prestiging the Trapper in the base game, because it helps us get to pain res hooks more reliably while also saving time for Deathslinger by letting him move around the map more quickly after he picks a survivor up. And beyond that, I have tried a pretty wide variety of builds based around different meme ideas and made them into gameplay videos. It's what this entire channel is founded on at this point, so if you're looking for more build variety, I post an unhealthy amount of Deathslinger content here. For perks, I have this tier list of perks based on how good I think they are for Deathslinger, and at the top we have perks that are good on just about any build and are generally good perks by themselves. Then we have perks that are good pairings in most builds, perks that are just okay but not great, perks that could be good but are generally poor fits for Deathslinger, and then perks that are generally bad across the board, and then perks that actively detriment Deathslinger. I know you might be surprised to see Save the Best for Last down here, but Deathslinger very often gets himself into situations where he can't afford to avoid a chase because of how danged slow he is. The reason why it's this low is because landing the spear on the Obsession before you've even dealt damage causes you to lose 2 stacks of Stabiffle. Then, dealing damage causes you to lose an additional 2 stacks. If you use your power in chase with the Obsession a single time, you lose all 8 stacks and effectively have an empty perk slot. The obvious answer would be to not chase the Obsession, which would require Deathslinger to find another survivor, which he can't do easily because he's a 110% killer. Genuinely, the real damage that this perk does is that it baits Deathslinger into applying pressure incorrectly, and it sets him on the back foot if the mid game goes terribly. Dark Arrogance doesn't extend the duration of chain break stuns, but you're often not vaulting windows enough to get use out of the perk, and pallet stuns are punishing enough. And finally, Distressing is really bad because it makes survivors pre-running worse. That's it. It's just a bad perk on Slinger whose power is stronger the less that survivors can see him. Survivors have these dedicated positions on every tile that gives them all the information they need to run to a location that they call Checkspots, because you're standing in a spot to check the killer's movement. It's a very high level concept, I know. Deathslinger, funny enough, has his own version of check spots that he can do on every tile that happens to intersect with survivor movement. And while I could make an entire video about every tile and every individual map, I think it'd be more beneficial for the sake of this video guide to talk about the one that I run into most frequently, the Killer Shack. Every map has a different shack layout, but with easy check spots for Slinger at either door or at the main window. Most survivors will hold their check spots at the furthest corners away from the Deathslinger, which means that if they anticipate Deathslinger to move through the shack and meet them at this corner, the survivor will run for this corner to make the most distance. While they are traveling, they cross some lines of sight that can be shot with consistency once you get the timing down. On the side with the window, if the survivor is at this corner and they start running across, it takes them about 2 seconds until they are visible through the window. An oblique shot from this angle allows us to strafe outside of the shack, then we start reeling when we're about here to make the chain work for us. This is possible on every shack window, but it is easier when the pallet is gone because the pallet's hitbox can sometimes interfere with this shot. We can also do something similar in reverse from the window, where we catch the survivor crossing the opposite doorway. From experience, I know that survivors will leave this corner right around the time that I reach the window, so I can pretty consistently post up, then count 3, 2, 1 and land the shot almost every time. There are 2 shacks where this isn't possible though, and those are Toba Landing and the Forsaken Boneyard. Toba Landing inexplicably has an invisible hitbox on the inside of this pipe, making this shot impossible from this angle, while both Toba and the Forsaken Boneyard spawn this locker too close to the door to attempt a shot going the other way. And while we're still talking about Toba Landing, it remains to be the only shack that doesn't have an opening on the back wall, making it the only shack that we actively want to avoid. Forsaken Boneyards used to have an angle through this wall where you could shoot someone standing at the window, but it's been blocked now, and the rock is a different color too. It's like, oh, here's the character that you have to interact with to get your quest, because they're shaded differently from the background. And for some common tiles, on TL tiles, the killer generally needs to chase from the inside of the tile to force the survivor into a slow vault on one half of it. If we don't catch them going back and forth here, the idea is that we gradually force them to take a fast window vault here, at which point we can drift around the corner and catch them easily. If they don't vault, it makes the catch up even easier anyway. 4-lane tiles are interesting in the way that Deathslinger's weirdest check spot is at the pallet, depending on if the pallet is flush with the end of the tile and if it's a short wall. If we have a short wall, we bait the pallet drop that catches the survivor while they're animation locked, followed up by walking around the short wall and then reeling the survivor in from there. On long walls, if the pallet is flush and the survivor pre-drops way in advance, we can actually strafe to the side and have them slide off of the pallet while reeling them in and then pull them along the perpendicular wall, but the actual scenario for this one's a lot less likely because survivors like to try and save their pallets against pretty much any killer, really. Past that, the best general advice I can give on any tile is that windows are your friend. Most survivors will run past a check spot without any regard to the window they're running in front of, allowing you to anticipate their movement. What I'm trying to get at with this section is that Deathslinger is a killer that highly benefits from predicting survivor movement patterns, which also comes with its own genre of patience. This tip doesn't really fit this segment, but sometimes it's good to hold your aim to punish an indecisive survivor. Most survivors who dodge away from a corner will commit to the movement after 2 dodges, unless they're not looking, at which point it's just easy to count to 3 and... Okay. For this segment, I think it's easier if I take a game that I played and talk over the decisions I made throughout to highlight the talking points that I have brought up so far. This segment will of course assume that you know the basics of playing the killer role, and if you're this far into the video and haven't figured that out yet though, I would highly recommend checking out my beginner's killer guide here so that you don't get lost during this explanation.
Alright, so in this demonstration, different microphone setup and everything from what you've been hearing throughout the video, but we're on Toba Landing, you know, playing as the good old Deathslinger, as, you know, would be expected from this match. And first things first, when I'm looking out the gates, I'm going to kind of just walk in a straight direction away from spawn, because that's usually where most survivors do spawn. And we do spot this Fungmin in the distance here, and she kind of just ends up running into us, so that's a pretty easy M1. No reason to really go for a shot. And then here, I aim, and I am aiming in a way where it's out to her left. It's kind of at the middle of her hitbox in case she crouches and dodges to the left. And we can see from her model that she's looking behind herself. So this means that I am anticipating that she's going to try and dodge my shot, which she does. She does try to like crouch and then go slightly to the left. So I do kind of get that guess correct. And I get a very quick first down here on this player. And I look around, you know, see if anybody's nearby, because I'm half anticipating that there's going to be someone nearby, because we're so fast off the spawn that there has to be someone nearby. Spoiler for making it a little bit difficult for me to hook here. And then we go back out and I see, oh, there's scratch marks here. So that means that there's someone here. I have no idea how this attack misses. I'm going to be totally honest with you. Trying to take the shot at the pallet there, but she doesn't stick around, so... Again, we would just go for really basic M1. You don't need to shoot all the time. Now here, I think I can shoot over the rock if I aim a little higher, actually, to get her. But I don't, so I end up missing, and that's fine. Just tap M2 here, because she's zoning herself into a corner before I've even started aiming. And at that range, again, it's just not really worth my time trying to go for a shot when you can just follow up with an M1 and not have to reload. So 2 hooks right off the bat. I hear footsteps behind me here, and I see, oh, okay, so these scratch marks ran out this way, and then they found the back of shack, and oh, and it's the Fungmin again. And in this scenario, I think now she's touched a gen, so she doesn't have decisive strike, and I kind of line my shot up in a direction that she's, you know, running away from me, kind of almost in a perpendicular manner. I didn't really even recognize that that was a window there, to be honest with you. So I still take the shot anyway, still get the hit here. And in this moment, right, if this were any other situation, I probably wouldn't be chasing the Feng Min here, because the Feng is going for a corner of the map where we don't really have pressure, and it's like there's 2 people, potentially 3 people behind me because they just unhooked the Jane and healed it really quickly, so it probably means that there's somebody with will make it. But I figure we're at 5 gens. If they're unhooking and healing that quickly, then it's likely that they don't have a whole lot of pressure on the rest of the map. Now, because we have Thrilling Tremors in this build, we can actually see when we pick somebody up what generators are being worked on. And earlier when we picked up the Jane here, get around to picking her up. Or sorry, was it the Jane? No, it was the Feng Min actually. When we picked up the Feng Min here, and we looked around the map. After we get this all figured out here, we'll look back, we can see, I remember that this generator was being worked on, but I kind of figured like at this point, you know, it's one generator, I can get somebody on Death Hook extremely early in this game, and this loop is kind of weird in its shape. It's a lot less safe, and there's that gen that we were talking about a second ago. I'm trying to like line up a shot through these bushes here. I can't remember at the moment if there's like any shot that can actually go through this, but this is what I'm envisioning, right? Like I'm trying to see, okay, if I can time this with this gap or this gap here, and I think I do end up going for a shot here eventually because I think I can weave it through these bushes. Here we go. And I don't know what I hit here. I'm gonna be so honest, I have no idea what this hits. I think this hits like there's a hitbox on these plants for some reason, so it's, I guess, just good to know for future reference that I can't shoot through that. And then I start chasing one direction, but then I realize I don't want to be on the outside of this palette, because if I'm on the outside of this palette, my back is to the corner of the map, and I basically give the Feng Min the entire width of the map to work with when she finally drops this palette. So I'm like, okay, well, we got to chase this direction. I'm seeing if I can line up the shot again, see if there was like some reason that I missed that or anything like that. And she just drops the pallet anyway. And now we remember from our earlier chase that she likes to crouch, so we're just going to hold our aim a little bit here and then adjust so that we can catch the top of her hitbox here. We're not reeling yet. You can listen to hear that I'm not reeling yet because I don't want to get myself caught on geometry that I'm not interested in getting caught on. And then we'll start reeling a little bit here and then swing around the back of the pallet. Just so that we let the chain work for us as much as we can. We had talked about that earlier, about chain manipulation and everything. And boil over is a thing. And a second gen does go, which is kind of surprising. I was not expecting there to be 2 gens done in this time, but, you know, it's fine. We have somebody on Death Hook. But the thing that really annoys me here is I look around and there's no progress on any gens. No gens have been touched whatsoever. So Thrilling Tremors tells us that there's literally nothing anywhere that you can do or that you can go to. So I check this gen. I'm like, okay, well maybe they like had a late return to this gen in the corner, and there's nothing. So they unhook a few seconds ago, and then the Feng Min gets healed here really quickly. And so I think, okay, the time between her getting unhooked and getting healed means that there's likely 2 people at least back here. So no progress on gens means that I have no idea where anybody is, so I'm going to go back to Hook to find 2 people, and I find the Feng Min again, and turn around and take a shot here on the main building and knock her down. Now, obviously, this is probably like the closest that I'll ever get to unintentionally tunneling, I guess, but like, you can understand the thought process that goes behind this. I wanted to go find a survivor. I couldn't find anyone in any gens. I didn't see anybody when I went across the map. They healed really quickly under Hook, which makes me think that there's at least somebody with will make it, or 2 people there. I also don't see that person's foot. Let me go back a little bit here to show you. Right here in main, if you look at main door, you can actually see somebody's foot like retract there for a second. Anyway, I don't spot them out. I see the scratch marks on my left, and I'm like, huh, there's somebody who was inside of main. But where did they go? Nobody knows. I see, like, well, the scratch marks kind of terminate up here. Did they go upstairs? Did they walk around the bottom of main? So I kind of figured out they probably walked around bottom main. And I still have no idea where their gen progress is, so I'm going to go check these gens in the corner. There's no pistons moving on that one, no audio on that one either. This is where whispers would come in handy too. I would be able to know if there was somebody in that corner or not. But I digress. So I go back up to main, trying to see if I can catch that person's scratch marks that I had seen. And, you know, there's like a lot of kind of like walking around here that I do. And I eventually do spot the Rick on this gen here as he's working on it, and I just blow it up with turn back the clock. And now we're on this pallet here. I think that I have reloaded for some reason. And I try to go for a shot over top, but he crouches, so I'm like, okay, that's good to know. This guy crouches. Now this shot here is kind of embarrassing, like the timing was a little bit off. In my head, I'm thinking, oh, surely Rick is going to try to dodge once, and then the timing will be better when I actually land the shot here. So I'm like, I'm very surprised when he actually just commits to the corner. But you can shoot behind this hook. Some hooks you can't. This one you can. But we're on Shack on Toba Landing. And so this means that I don't have any opportunity to go for any fun shots. I can only go for a shot that's on the main window here. So we break the chain as he vaults through the window, and I try to line up a shot going back through the window, but he's already past it, and the metal pipe's in the way because it's Toba Landing and you can't make it shots. And then he goes for the vault again, which really surprises me. I'm expecting him to fake the vault and try to go for the pallet. I think, oh wait, no, I can't do that actually because it's Toba Landing. He vaults the window a second time, and then we're going to go around and catch him on a third volley here. And a gen does go in that time, where I had been looking for other survivors and everything, but we catch him at the window eventually. It's fine. This is again like me talking earlier about how windows are your friends when you're playing Deathslinger, because it locks a survivor into an animation block, and you can hit over windows. I think that's something that I didn't mention in the script, because it's something that's so natural to me that I don't really think about it. Anyway, Thrilling Tremors reveals that there's somebody up here on main gen, and it's pretty damn close to getting finished, but we have turned back the clock, so we kick the Jane off, we hit her in the back, and we are able to follow up. I try to aim down the stairs here, and she goes around the stairs just in time, so it's just, you know, neither here nor there on terms of my own personal timing. Some of these shots that I have later in the game are a little bit weird. I think I see the Feng Min here as well. I'm like, okay, well, they're going to run for Shack. That guy runs for Shack door. I aim out here, and I hit the rock because I don't know. I'm sleep deprived. I just make a really bad call. But I pick up the Jane here and get my 6th hook of the game. And I know with one person over by Shack and one person over on my left inside of this tile that there's something going on there. And then I figure, oh, these two were split up, which means that this guy healed himself really quickly, which means he probably had Resurgence and a medkit. I actually check a locker here because I almost think that it's Inner Strength. I have been seeing that perk a decent amount recently. And then there's this chase. I try to go for the shot on him on the corner here, and he teleports to the pallet. It's whatever. This pallet as well on Deathslinger, which I'll demonstrate in a second here in the recording, is actually not safe because you can shoot over this gap here. Now, the timing on it, I keep thinking that he's going to dodge out to the right, and he doesn't, but I know that I can get a hit here if I lunge in time, even if he gets the fast vault across. Anyway, point being that that pallet is actually not very safe against Deathslinger, so I actually keep it down for now because I figure it's better for me to go for the chase in this moment than it is for me to go for anything else. I hear him on this corner, I have my red light a little bit, make it awkward for him, and then catch him in the vault, which saves us a lot of time because now I instantly pick up, immediately get Thrilling Tremors value, hook him pretty quickly. I know that there's someone on main again, and also someone on that far gen in the way back corner, but I figure main gen had some pretty high progress on it before. The last person that had been on main gen was the Jane, and I see the Feng Min here, so I figure, okay, well, that gen in the corner had been getting work done, which meant that the Jane was likely the one back there. And I don't know why I don't end up chasing after the Feng Min here. I think it's a very easy... Oh, no, I do, never mind. I do end up chasing after her here. Back into this corner. But again, like, I know that I'm at an advantage, and she just, for some reason, doesn't react to me rounding this corner at all. I just get a all-up shot. It's totally fine. But I figured, since I'd seen that gen getting progress done, that the Jane was likely in that corner, and now I know exactly where she is because she unhooked, and again, there's our confirmation of resurgence because of how fast that heal goes. And we know where everyone is, give or take. So back to the hook we go, because it's both survivors back in this corner. One person on the hook. Just looking around, taking a little peep. I don't think I see anybody here at all. I'm just kind of like listening to see maybe they went for the gen in the corner. I don't hear anything. I don't think you would hear anything at that range anyway, but I end up changing course because I figure, oh yeah, well, there's nothing here. And then I find out, oh, actually, all three of them here. You can shoot through that. I was aiming a little bit high in that scenario. And there, on this shot specifically, let me back it up to this corner again. On this shot specifically, you'll see that I aim pretty damn low because I know that this guy likes to crouch, and I know that I kind of want to get it on the back of the bend of this tree. So even if we don't hit him, squarely in the chest or anything, no matter what part of his hitbox that we hit here, we'll still be able to get the shot here. Drag him out, take the hit, and now he's deep wound and he's on this pallet again, and I think like, oh, maybe he'll play this pallet again for me. He doesn't. I get body blocked by the Feng Min. It doesn't really matter because I have somebody dead on hook, and I hear that there's somebody on this gen upstairs again. And what is it? Oh, it's our dead on hook Jane. We turn back the clock again, which has been an absolute godsend in this. And I don't even bother going for a shot. I kind of figure it's just simplify, right? Like just play the simplest way that you can. This guy jumps into a locker, and I figure even if you're the Obsession and you have Decisive Strike, I'm not particularly worried about it. I have one of your teammates down, the other one is injured. You are Death Hook, so you had better have Decisive Strike, and even then I can probably complete the chase pretty quickly after the stun goes through. So at worst, I'm getting one hook on the Jane whom I just downed. And at best, I am calling your bluff and I'm getting a kill on somebody. And that leaves me with just the Feng Min who, spoiler alert, she does get out through the hatch, but this is what I've been thinking about. Now, something that I would like to point out along the way is, the way that I'm thinking about all of these tiles. We go back to this earlier chase against the Jane that we had here, with that weird whiff and all of that. But on this section here, I get an M1, right? Take an M1, and then she goes behind this rock, and I'm thinking, I know that her hitbox rounds out over top of this rock, and there's a dip in the rock here. Locker hitboxes are usually pretty consistent, so we don't have to worry about that. If I aim just a little bit higher here, because I'm aiming too low, I'm too close to the rock. If I aim a little bit higher here, and if I'm like kind of tilted out a bit, aim for more of this corner here instead of on top of this here, we can aim over this dip and catch the Jane there. Or if we go into, even with the shots that we had on this person here, I was trying to attempt a shot through this. I don't know if this foliage is opened up or not, or if I hit some weird hitbox here or something along those lines, or if there's just a new hitbox on this and that makes this palette even worse. But even so, while we're chasing this person, right, she eventually, let's skip ahead a bit to get to where she actually drops the pallet here. When she drops the pallet, again, we remember that when she crouches, even though she thinks that she's safe in the corner here, her hitbox rounds out over top of this, and the pallet hitbox is consistent, so we just aim over top of her hitbox, get the shot, and then, as I talked about earlier, reel in such a way that we don't get stuck on the pallet. It's all about positioning, it's all about understanding how hitboxes work and looking for little dips in geometry. Sometimes you'll have to aim a little bit higher when you're next to something, sure, but again, when we have this chase against the Rick underneath main, which we'll skip ahead to here, also, knowing that I can shoot behind the, even in this, like, initial part where I miss my shot, right? Like, on this, I'm, like, looking for a shot here, click. But I know that there's a dip in this rock here, so I can shoot over that. And if I actually aim low enough here, I aim a little bit too high. We go back a few frames here, or a few seconds, I guess. Matter. But I know that in this moment here, like, I'm aiming too high. If I aim a little bit lower, a little bit closer to the rock, I do catch this guy here. And he's injured before we even, make it to our shack shenanigans. And then understanding as well that, hooks don't have hitbox. you have to understand like the specific niche scenarios for it, but hooks don't have hitboxes behind them. So we know that there's the ability for me to take the shot there. And that eventually just culminates in being like, well, I don't know where these survivors are. I know where 2 survivors are potentially. So I'm going to act off of the information that has been given to me. Now, of course, we are carried a bit by our perks because this build, Starva's build, has been doing pretty decent for me lately, where you play Agitation to get yourself around the map quicker, you play Forever Entwined to get hooks faster. Turn Back the Clock is really good on Deathslinger because you don't have to go through the pain of going to a generator and kicking it or being in range for Surge. You actually get to pick where you want to have your regression actually initiate, which is really nice. It's just a really good time saver overall. And then Thrilling Tremors is good because even if you don't know exactly where the survivor is going to be, you can still buy yourself all of that time, the 16 seconds of generator block, in order to make yourself across the map and save yourself some time on a variety of things. I just used my Turn Back the Clock there because I know that the gen on main is still regressing, and yeah, that's just how the game ends. So hopefully that kind of demonstration helps you understand like the way that I think about killer macro, the way that I think about playing this killer specifically, in such a way that I'm always looking for gaps. I mean, you can shoot underneath this gap beneath the stairs, you can shoot over all of this, because Toba Landing has a lot of like really spiny structures that you can shoot through. Of course, you can shoot underneath the railings here. And even when we go back, I want to look at, there was like a section where we're on main build. On this window vault here as well, you can actually shoot underneath the railing and catch somebody as they're falling. If you catch them here, you can actually strafe down the ramp and catch and reel them in towards yourself and get a hit here. So this is a guaranteed down. This window is not safe against Deathslinger. A lot of the pallets on this map are not safe against Deathslinger, or window vaults for that matter. The only thing that sucks about the map is that it's visually noisy, and it has a lot of clutter and stuff that gets in the way of Deathslinger, but there's actually a lot of really good shots that you can land on it, as long as you're not going to Shack. Anyway, I've rambled far too much. I hope this helps you understand the way that I think about playing this killer. It's not a perfect game necessarily. There's a lot of missed shots that I shouldn't have missed, but yeah, that's my breakdown for a full game. And on to the last segment of the video.
I've said pretty much everything that I want to say about the Deathslinger in terms of how I use his power for practical reasons. All that's left now, aside from rambling, hyper-specific tips that probably fit better into shorts, is to talk about the cosmetics that Deathslinger has. I've mentioned this in a short before, but the only weapon that is perfectly accurate to its sights is the default weapon, Death to Bayshore. I don't buy cosmetics, so I don't have all the examples to give you, but here's the default weapon, the Prestige weapon, the Chocolate Halloween event weapon, the Moth-Eaten weapon, the Blighted weapon, and one of the Rift Pass weapons. The displacement on the spear is so bad that you can see it clipping out of the rifle on most skins, and when you compare them all in the shop, there is a noticeable bounce between the default weapon and any of the weapon skins. If you swap between the weapons though, there isn't any noticeable bounce. This has led several people on this immensely popular short to say that the default weapon is wrong and that everyone after it is correct. Here's the thing though. Deathslinger's collision is so precise that you can hit shots like these ones. The default weapon aids in this precision by guaranteeing that the shot is always going to land at the visually consistent guide at the tip of the crosshair. The other weapons are not visually consistent because of how it sets the crosshair lower, and they are significantly more bulky than the default weapon. Yes, you can adjust to your favorite weapon, but I find it better to adjust to the environment that you are placed in because it allows for more consistent experimentation. That and the other weapons just block more of your screen when you're aiming. I'll probably get this video done before the cosmetic contest skin gets released, and I'm willing to bet that behavior will mess up this new gun as well, so just use the default weapon and save yourself some time. Now for the other cosmetics. My personal favorite combo is the Anniversary Mask with the young Caleb body, since I think the copper and gold tones paired together really well. I'd probably swap the body with this dust covered one though, since the grayish brown of the dirt on the cloak also looks really nice with the Anniversary Mask. And aside from that, I've seen plenty of people bring the Slipknot mask with the double-crossed body, solid combo. I also used to be a huge fan of the Moth skin, and I would wear the Blighted skin more if it didn't make me glow like a Christmas tree. I know that's the point of the Blighted skins, but it feels especially bad on a killer that has to be semi-stealthy. I'm not too big of a fan of the skins that remove the hat and cloak, so the rest of the skins are just alright for me. I haven't bought the Iron Maiden skin, mostly because I, again, almost never paid for cosmetics, and it looks cool, but the gun skin... oh boy, that gun skin, it's not great. The crosshair up here is off center, the model is super bulky, and it's also not accurate to the tip like every other cosmetic gun. The fact that this is a linked set also makes me highly disinclined to buy it just because the gun is so terrible for visual clarity. So in my opinion, I think the Deathslinger has a few slick cosmetics. They're not all bangers like the Unknown or the Dredge, but there are some neat ones to look at. If you're not interested in cosmetics for this killer though, it doesn't matter. I think base Deathslinger looks cool as hell. That was the look that got me into him to begin with, and well, look where we are now. And that is literally everything I have to say about the Deathslinger. Good luck in your games, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.